we're so organized because we're all plotters. Just kidding.
Them's fighting words.
And soon our audience will find out that that was a big fat lie. So I want to welcome everyone for coming today to our May WritersConnect event, which is writing for the Waddies, Plotters versus Pantsers. So we're going to have a smackdown here and figure out which is the best. My name is Deborah Goals, and I'm known as Brittany Charmentine on Wattpad. And I am actually not really a plotter or a pantser. I'm more of a plantser, which we will get into a little bit later. I kind of do a combination package that I've come to after trying both. And I write fantasy and sci-fi. And a fun fact about me is that I once dressed up as a mermaid for a costume party. And if you want to see the photo of me, you can go to Brittany's writer's room and you can check out that photo. It was quite a lot of work, like 1,000 hours of work went into making that costume. So it was pretty cool. And now, without further ado, I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and we're going to go in alphabetical order by first name. And so who's our first person? Let's start with Henry. Okay. All the way to the H's.
All right. Hi, I am Henry Scott, also Henry Scott on Wattpad. I write thrillers mainly. I had a 5-book series in the paid program on Wattpad that now is over on Amazon. I'm a planter, same as Brittany. We'll get into those details later. And a fun fact about me is my day job, I'm an engineer, so I drive experimental vehicles around test tracks all day. Lots of fun.
I love that. I'm so intrigued. Okay, and Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane Peden, also Jane Peden on Wattpad. I write contemporary romances and thrillers. I am a complete pantser all the way. So we'll be talking about that some more later and why I think that is such a fun way to write. I write, a lot of my stories are set in Miami. I write romances about lawyers in Miami, and you can find my stories in paid, and also I have some free stories on Wattpad. And the fun fact about me is I am uniquely qualified to write about lawyers and romance because I am a trial lawyer practicing in Florida. And that's another interesting, funny thing is that a couple of times I've gotten comments from people saying, that's not how a courtroom works, or that's not right legally. And I'm like, honey, believe me, I know how a courtroom works.
I love it. That's so cool. Mason.
Hi, I'm Mason Fitzgibbon. My username is Mason Fitzy. I'm known mostly for writing horror, even though I have recently kind of crossed genres and done some romance. I am a full-on pantser, pantsing all the way. A fun fact about me is I live about 20 minutes away from Wattpad headquarters, and there's a park out front, and my favorite place to write every day is out in the park in front of headquarters.
That is so cool. I've been there once, and it is just such a cool place. Okay, and Sabrina.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sabrina Blackberry, same name on Wattpad. I'm here for the Plotters, and let's see, I write fantasy, urban fantasy, high fantasy, all kinds of fantasy. And a fun fact about me is that I volunteer at a Renaissance festival twice a year.
That's pretty cool. I haven't been to one in so long, but someday I'm going to go to one that you're working at.
I'll get you tickets.
Free tickets? Wow, that would be amazing. Okay, and Van, I don't see you, Van.
I'm here.
Is your camera on?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, I don't know why
I can see her.
You can see her? Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm here. All right. Well, I am Van Carly, also known as Van_Carly on Wattpad. I am a pantser. I occasionally do a combo of pantsing and plotting, but that depends on the circumstance. Let's see. I've been on Wattpad for about 10 years now. I dabble in different genres because I like being able to hop around and kind of just create whatever story comes to my head, and if it fits in that genre, it fits. A fun or an interesting thing about me is I am, I guess you could say, a superhero by day. I work in cardiology, examining heart rhythms and helping out patients.
Okay, wow, that is really cool. And thank you for making the world a better place.
I try.
Okay, well, I thought the first thing we ought to do is, actually, I have to delete somebody here that's accidentally on the stage. Okay, there we go. Sorry, little technical thing there. I thought the first thing we ought to do is maybe some people in our audience don't know what these different terms mean. And I thought, hey, why not explain it first? So we're going to start with a representative from each of the various methodologies. And I'd like to start with Jane telling us, what is a pantser?
Okay. Well, a pantser, the term came, and it slipped my mind who the author was who first said it in an interview, but there was a romance author who was being questioned about her process, said, I write by the seat of my pants. And that's where the term pantser came from. When you're a pantser, typically you come up with something about your book, an idea. For me, often it's just a hook, a situation. And then instead of sitting down and figuring out where everything's going to go, you just start writing. And then you figure out the story as you're going along. And so that's what being a pantser is.
Okay, and do you know any big famous authors that we might all know who use this methodology?
Yes, if you're into romance at all, you're probably familiar with Nora Roberts because she has sold, millions and millions of copies of her books internationally, been writing since I think the early 1980s. When she first started out her career, and she sold a few books and she got an agent. And then after she sold a few more, and her process was she would write a romance. She'd write the whole book, and then she would send it to her agent, and her agent would submit it to the publisher. And it was a Silhouette, I believe, at that time, which later merged with Harlequin. And one day and Nora tells this story at a conference. I've heard her tell it. And one day her agent called her up and was really excited and said, Nora, I've got the most wonderful news. The publisher now says you can write on proposal. You don't have to write the whole book. All you have to do is write a synopsis and send it in, and maybe the first chapter. And Nora thought, oh, crap. Because she thought, but she didn't tell her agent. She thought, how would I possibly be able to write a synopsis when I have no idea what's going to happen in this book until I finish writing the whole book? But she was so embarrassed that she didn't tell her agent. Instead, she just started writing super, super fast. And she would write the whole book, and then she would write a synopsis and then send the synopsis to her agent. And her agent never knew that the book was already written. And then the agent would sell it, say, well, how long will it take you to write this book, Nora? And then eventually she confessed, and her agent said, well, for heaven's sakes, you don't have to sell on synopsis. It's fine if you want to write the whole book. And what Nora has described her process of is I just vomit out the first draft, and then I go back and clean it up later. So that's probably the most famous pantser that I'm familiar with.
That's a good story. Okay, now we have for team plotter, Sabrina.
Yes, so plotting is how I do it. A plotter is, as the name sounds, it's a little bit more clear than pantser. You want to work out the plot of your story before you start writing. And that can be as simple as just knowing all the steps or beats to your story before you start, or you can get really in depth. You can have spreadsheets and character bios and Pinterest boards and so many details written down. You know every single tiny step of the entire way. So it's knowing where you're going to do before you start doing it. I do know a couple famous plotters. E.L. Stein. You guys know who that is for your childhood nightmares? I think E.L. Stein was a part of that. John Grisham. Yeah, didn't E.L. Stein write like the Goosebumps?
Yeah, I thought it was R.L., but maybe I'm just.
Oh, you're right. I was looking. See, I was looking. Who is E.L. Stein? I got it wrong then, but whoever E.L. Stein is a plotter, because I was looking for some examples.
His alter ego, maybe.
So I could tell you guys.
Are you mixing E.L. James and R.L. Stein?
Not a likely combo.
Did it, and I came up with an E.L. Stein. John Grisham, which I do know who that is. John Grisham was another one who did plotting, and I found a really cool quote he wrote here about it, actually. So this is from Grisham. The more time I spend on the outline, the easier the book is to write. And if I cheat on and I feel that very deeply.
Yeah.
That was definitely from John Grisham. So
fellow lawyer turned writer.
There you go.
Okay. Now there's this sort of middle ground we're calling it a plantser. And Henry, would you like to represent the plantsers in the group?
Sure, yeah. Plantsers, so that's a hybrid, as I see it, between a plotter and a pantser. You're in both camps, so you kind of take the best of both worlds. When I start writing, I will religiously outline my story, create a spreadsheet, chapter by chapter. I start writing, and invariably, the story wants to go a different place than I plotted. I will sometimes try and get it back on track. Doesn't always work out for me, but yeah, I usually have mileposts along the way. Say I do want to go from New York to LA, and I know I want to go through Kansas City and Las Vegas. But yeah, I may detour to see the biggest ball of string over in St. Paul or something, and I ends up being a better story if I do take that detour. So yeah, I like to view it as the best of both camps. I think a famous plantser, I believe, is one of my favorite authors, Harlan Coben. He writes a lot of thriller, suspense type stories. I think he's got Netflix shows now as well. And he does something similar. He kind of has those goalposts that he knows he wants to hit. He has an ending with a unique twist, and he kind of makes sure he gets there, but he will deviate along the way.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, now that we all know what we're talking about, I would like for each of you to tell us how you decided whether to plot or pants or plants, whether you've used more than one method during your writing career. And let's start with Henry.
I think I really tried to be a plotter in the beginning, and it just, like I said a moment ago, it did not work out. The story ended up just flat when I really stuck to my outline. It just didn't seem to have the life that I wanted to. Lifelong reader, so I knew I was missing something, and it just wasn't going to be exciting for the readers. So I, put on my pants and pantsed it.
Okay, cool. All right, Jane.
Well, when I first started writing, I really didn't know the difference, and I just started writing. So I think I just naturally started telling a story. And then I was writing romance, so I joined the Romance Writers of America, RWA, and I started to going to a lot of their workshops and conferences, and a lot of speakers were saying, you must plot your story, and here's what you need to do. You need to first interview all your characters and write these detailed character sketches, and then you have to do an outline, and they had big boards, and they had them color-coded and stickies on them. I said, this is the only way to do it, to get to where you need to go in your story. And I tried it and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. All of a sudden, writing wasn't fun anymore. Mm-hmm. And then when I tried to follow it, tried following it, I thought, well, I don't know what this person's favorite color is, and why does it matter? And all these, I just felt like I was randomly making things up. And when I would try to follow it, it felt like it was taking the fun out of the story for me. Because to me, the fun was kind of discovering things and having, so maybe the character's favorite color is yellow, but I didn't know that until it came up in a conversation somewhere in the story. And all of a sudden, it's because of this giant field of sunflowers that she was in when she was a little girl. And now it makes sense. So I finally decided, I think what makes sense for me is to write the way that feels right to me. So I went back to pantsing, and I've never turned back. And I think the only bad writing advice I think that anyone can ever give you is to tell you that there's one way that you have to do it, because I think everybody's different. And some people, pantsing works wonders. I just live for it. It's so much fun for me. But for other people, I know other writers who it would drive them crazy to sit down and feel that they have no direction in where they're going.
Right. Well, I just think it's very interesting that you are a lawyer. So that's somebody who's a very logic-based person. Mm-hmm. And yet you really enjoy the discovery. So that's pretty cool.
Do you ever pant it in the courtroom?
Not intentionally, but there are, but you can't always predict what happens in court. And something comes up from the other, sometimes something will come up from the other side, or a witness will say something you totally didn't expect, and you do have to, kind of pants it then. So I try to be, it's funny, I try to be over prepared as a lawyer and have no preparation at all as a writer. But it works for me.
That's wonderful. I love that. Okay, Mason, are you here? Nope, she's lost the connection. So we will skip her for now and get back to her and go over to Sabrina.
Oh, okay. I did start as probably more of a plantser. I would know a few events that would happen in the story, and I knew I would have to write the things in between those events. And I tried, I really did. My first stories were very messy, and I would have a lot of inconsistencies. Like I would completely forget what I decided a character's eye color was or something, and then I would write something else later, and then when you go back through, you're like, oops. I do so much better now plotting. And there's several plotting methods, and I've tried a few of them. If you're somebody trying to get into plotting and you didn't before, there's the snowflake method, which is where it starts out small, like write a sentence about what your story's about. And if you can write a sentence, you can make it into a paragraph and then make it into a page, and so on from like that. At least until you get a pretty good outline or synopsis about it. I also really like Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I think that's a good one. That one probably helped me the most when I was first trying to figure out how to plot better. But these days, back to your Nora Roberts, I write a synopsis before I start writing now. I take my story out on a blind date. I have a blank notebook. Each story gets a blank notebook, and I go you got to set yourself up, go out to lunch or get a coffee, or really set up your spot, candles, blankets, whatever you need to do. And I put a lot of focus into it. And when I have the outline, when I find that when I sit down to write chapters, I'm not just sitting there staring at it what happens now? I have a bad problem with that. So since starting to outline better and keeping all these notes in the notebook for each book, I keep all these notes. There's a page for each character and so on and so forth. And I find that I can go through it quicker now that I know what's happening. That's me though. That's me.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to Mason, who has returned to us. And if you didn't hear
technical issues, I don't know what's going on. Let's pay
this. And speaking of technical issues, I apologize that I am like the big face on this whole thing. I don't know how to make myself small. So I apologize. You have to look at me so much. But everyone else is there just a little smaller. The question was, just as a reminder, Mason, how did you decide if you wanted to be a plotter or a pantser, and have you tried more than one?
Initially, when I first started writing novels when I was about 15, I did try to plot. I was like, this is how this is going to start. This is going to be the middle. This is going to be the end. And then I found that to be more boring. I like to go along the ride with my characters, and my stories are very character driven. So even if I did attempt to plot, I would never follow the plot because it just didn't seem to make sense for the characters. They wanted to go their own way. They kind of took over the story. So now when I write a story, I tend to think of like an opening or a hook, and then I just go from there. And that's like, I have the most fun doing that.
Well, you are so good with the hooks too. All your stories are hooky.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's not easy. That's a hard thing. So I commend you. Okay, Van, what about you?
Hello. So much like Jane, I've always been a pantser without even realizing that's what it was that I was doing. Years ago, I had discovered this quote from William Faulkner, and it really resonated with me. I was like, yes, that's me. That's what I'm doing. And he says, it begins with a character usually, and once he stands up on his feet and begins to move, all I can do is trot along behind him with a paper and pencil, trying to keep up long enough to put down what he says and does. And I thought that's me, because after a while, the characters kind of take on their own voice and their own little personalities, and it's them telling the story after a while. And so that I really feel that with the Pantser. I get an idea, and sometimes the idea is an ending, or it's a beginning, or it's a middle, and I have to figure out how am I going to get there, and I just kind of start writing and do it. Occasionally, I do a combo like Henry, but it depends on what's happening. So yearly or annually on Wattpad, there's a contest called the Open Novella Contest, and there's a time constraint, and there's also a word count limit or a word count maximum. So the max you can do is 40K words for your novella, and because there are these time constraints and a word count maximum, I have to be able to I guess, be more disciplined and make sure that I stay within the criteria and I don't overwrite, because I want to be able to reach each milestone, and you want to win. This year I did not succeed, however. I went way over, so I ended up self-disqualifying. But those are occasions when I will do a combo, because I know that I have to, meet a certain deadline or time or word count. And so then I will set up little lamp posts along the way, so I know, like, okay, in chapter 5, Valerie is supposed to visit her father and learn a big secret. And then I know once I get there, something big's supposed to happen. So that's how I do a mixture of the plotting and pantsing when I do it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so far we've kind of been one at a time. Now I'm going to throw you guys all in together, get some sparks flying. I was hoping you could, let's start with the pros and cons of pantsing, but anybody can pop in and, talk about why they changed, or, why they stay with it. And then we can get into the pros and cons of plotting. So who wants to start and defend their position?
I will. Well, I think one of the biggest pros for me of pantsing is I really feel like some of my stories have gone in a direction that I never would have imagined when I first sat down and started, to think about writing it. And to me, it's just very freeing, because I've come up with things that I think made the story so much better, because I wasn't limited at all by any kind of a preconceived roadmap. So to me, that's two biggest advantages to me are, one, that you can discover these other things along the way that you might otherwise not even have thought about. And also that for me, it's exciting. I mean, it never gets boring. I have fun when I'm pantsing.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Anybody else want to pop in on that?
I think pantsing is a lot of fun, especially on Wattpad, because you have the comment section. So when you start writing a story and people are trying to guess what happens, or they're making predictions, sometimes I just want them to be wrong and surprise everyone. And you can do that when you pants, because you can just start making up random plot lines and you don't know where to go. So that's a lot of fun, because you get a lot of interaction and you get a lot of reaction when you're not doing what people are expecting. If you kill off a character that you realized everybody loves, or you make a couple break up that everyone loved together. like that's a lot of fun because you have all this power and you can do what you want. But if you've plotted out your entire story, you don't have that freedom.
Yeah.
You know, I've found that too with comments that a reader will make, that sometimes I spend more time with the character because I had somebody in there that I thought was just like a little secondary character who did their thing and you were never going to see them again. And all of a sudden, readers start shipping them and another character. And I think, oh, I'm going to take that a little further. Let's do something with that person. People want to know. So I do that too.
Well, I'm going to jump in as a kind of combo person and tell you my story of when I started writing. I was working on a very, very early version of my Alien story. And I went to a writing workshop, and the teacher really liked my idea. She liked my writing. And at the end, she pulled me aside and she said, just write like the wind. And I was like, okay, she knows, she's a published writer. I'm going to write like the wind because that's what she told me to do. So I wrote like the wind. And I wrote basically 250,000 words of gobbledygook. I had a lot of fun writing it, and the story was just kind of meandering, and I didn't know anything. I was an avid reader, but I'd never written a novel before, and and I ended up with this behemoth. And eventually I found out I was actually writing 2 books at the same time, and I had to break them up, and it turned out to be a lot of work. And at the end of that, I said never again, because that was like a year of my life spent. And I also am, I believe that nothing is a waste. Nothing you write is a waste. You're getting better, you're improving, you're getting to know your characters. Like, nothing was a waste, but I wanted to be a professional writer. And I just thought, I can't afford to just have a meandering story like this. And so I started researching different methodologies. I came across the snowflake method early on, and then eventually I settled on Save the Cat. But now I have to know at least I have to make sure that I have a structure, enough of a structure to hang a story on. So that's how I became a pantser. And so that's my defense of not just being, a pantser, because, the other thing I think is that, as you become a more experienced author, you have a real feel for story, and, you just feel when something needs to happen. And then it becomes sort of easier to pants. I don't know. That's what I think. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's sort of what
I agree. Each story that I've pantsed faster than the last. Mm-hmm. It's just, you get the feel for how a story should go. Just writing, you come over those obstacles way easier. And I can produce a novel a lot faster than I did when I first joined the website in 2013. I can do a book much, much quicker and have more updates out more often now.
We know about your updates, Mason.
Yes. Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Mason is an avid updater, and she gets a lot of abuse about it from Rodney. Because she makes the rest of us look bad.
Short and sweet chapters is what I found.
Yeah.
I kind of have a similar experience as you, Deb. I have a story on Wattpad called Water in a Time of Thirst, and it was a pantsed idea. It just came to me because of the California drought, and I was like, what if the entire country was like Mad Max and just desert? And then I started writing, but it took me 4 years to complete the story because I was pantsing it, and every time I felt like I was kind of reaching the end, I was like, but no, wait, there's more story here. And I'd keep writing and writing and writing. Now, I eventually did complete it, and that book shortlisted for the Waddies in 2018. Was it 2018? I think 2018. And that's the book that actually got me noticed for the STAR program. So in a way, it served me well that I just kept writing and writing and writing. But from that book, I did learn that, okay, I need to figure out, the pacing a bit more, even though I'm pantsing. I can't just be like, oh, but wait, there's more. Let's keep writing. It's a massive book. So I've learned to hone that in a little bit, but I'm still at my core a pantser.
Well, for one of the benefits to me of plotting, especially on Wattpad, is that you know where you're heading. And if you're pantsing, I would think that sometimes you write yourself into a corner and you realize, oh no, I have to have that guy in chapter 2 has to go to the store first. Like, what was I thinking? Do you have any issues with that, pantsing people? And do you go back on Wattpad and change an earlier chapter based on maybe a plot hole or something that you notice later?
Yes, I do that. And see, I feel almost like I have the more of a freedom to be able to go back and change things because I have a smaller audience. So it's like, well, no one's going to notice if I go back and I make sure and I change something to the plot where, okay, this person figures out this. So now I can have this happen over here in the future. No one's going to notice. Maybe people do notice. I don't know. But right now I feel like I can get away with doing that.
Well, any of the rest of you? What do you
I never go back and change anything. It's like once I've updated it, that's it. It's there. And I have on a few occasions when, well, some of my books I had written the whole book and then I, uploaded it on a schedule on Wattpad. But with the one I have currently I'm writing on Wattpad right now, The Millionaire's Intriguing Offer, I'm writing as I go. So, if I make a mistake, I'm going to live with it. So, but to me, that's kind of challenging. I mean, it's, if I write myself into a corner, I'm going to have to write myself right back out again because whatever happened. And I don't like to go back and change it because for me, I feel like, well, I feel like it's kind of not fair to the readers who've read the previous chapters, and then all of a sudden something else happens, and they're like, "Wait, how could that be?" And then they go back to check, and I've changed the story. So, so I just kind of feel like, I know when I first started writing years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do this, but I feel like I'm better now at pantsing. That I don't make these really fatal mistakes, So, but hey, I mean, if we kill somebody off, we can always be like like Marvel and just bring them back again. Yeah, nobody ever dies in superhero world, so maybe that'll work for my romances too. And I can have somebody do something really crappy and then redeem them later and come up with a reason for why they did it that will make people love them again. Because it is kind of funny because sometimes the characters I think readers will love or readers end up hating. Like I'll get hating comments on what something does. Oh, he's such a jerk, and I'm thinking, I thought he was kind of a nice guy, and then they'll hate the heroine. Say, why is she being this way? But anyway, so that's I don't really go back. I feel I understand that's a challenge, but I just keep ever moving forward.
Do any of you change previous chapters? Because I do.
I do.
No, I don't change.
Yay, Henry.
Added characters, changed characters' names.
Yeah. Well, also, like if I make a mistake, I will go back and fix it. And if I do a major change, I will actually put an author note in the chapter and say, you might want to go back and reread chapter 3 because I just changed something. So I try to be, fair about it, but okay.
Life is too short to go back and have to rewrite. I'm moving forward, and I love that quote from, I think it was Michelangelo, who said that, the sculpture already existed. It was just hidden inside the block of marble, and you just chip away at it and find it. So, if I chip the wrong way, maybe the sculpture is going to have, a crooked nose, but we're going to live with that.
That's so funny that you're the romance author and you went to nose, and I'm thinking of a Michelangelo sculpture, and I'm
Hey, this is PG-13 here.
I'm sorry, my brain went there. Okay, well, that is all very helpful. The next thing I thought we could talk about, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit.
Do you want the defense for plotting?
Yes. Yes.
No, we do not.
No, who
kidding.
needs that? Let's just move on.
No. Come on, Sabrina.
I can keep it short and concise. There's several reasons I like plotting. As I mentioned before, having the entire outline allows me to cut down on the time where I'm just sitting and staring and thinking on my computer. I'm writing it because I know what happens. I catch a lot of plot holes before I've written them into the story by outlining.
Yep.
And I really like the ability to, when I tried to even remotely pants, I was very bad at being able to put in red herrings or plot twists or foreshadowing, any of that. And outlining, I have been able to do that a whole lot better.
Beautifully said. And I 100% agree with you with all of those things. So now that we've covered those, well, I guess the one thing we can say, one con of plotting that some people use is that you aren't surprising yourself. Like a lot of pantsers say, I like to be surprised. And if I'm being surprised, then the reader's being surprised.
Well, listen, your outline is only as concrete as you want it to be. Have I made a shift in a story before and then had to go back and rewrite my entire outline from like whatever point forward? Yes, I've done that.
Yeah.
It's only as concrete as you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is, who cares when the surprise happens? Like you can surprise yourself when you're outlining, you know, it doesn't have to be when in the act of writing. You can surprise yourself at any point. So I don't agree with that con personally. Okay, let's move on to talking about tools that we use for the various methodologies. And or software that you might use, spreadsheets, whatever. We touched on it a little bit, talking about the snowflake method and Save the Cat, but we didn't really get into any detail on it. But I think, why don't we start with a plotter? What kind of tools or software have you developed for yourself, or have you found that help you?
So I have a copy of the Save the Cat Writes a Novel, which I do like to still flip through now and again. But really the only actual tools I need, and I know there's special software out there for plotting, but I need a pen and I need a cute new notebook for each novel. And that's it. And then I sit down and, like I said, have a date with my novel while I'm figuring out what it's about and what I want to write and what's going to happen in it. And I just handwrite, fill that notebook. It feels more intimate. I'm getting really to the core of what I want the novel to be and what I want to be in it. And after that, I write in Google Docs. I like being able to write on my phone when I have something, you know, pop into my head, or write at home on my desktop, or write wherever I'm at. Being able to pick that up. And I like that it auto saves, because before I started using Google Docs, I can and have lost like thousands of words because I didn't save.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm not very software heavy for it. I just.
Okay. All right. Henry, what about you for plantsing?
I start out plotting. So yeah, being the engineer, I use an Excel spreadsheet. I know I usually write about 1,500, 2,000 word chapters typically. So I'll kind of outline each chapter and make sure I use the story grid process by Stephen Cohen, I think his name is, and kind of make sure that I have my beats at the right points so that I don't have chapters where there's just nothing going on, or just long conversations over coffee that don't get anywhere, which are fun, but just don't move the story along. So yeah, I use the story grid process with an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. Well, as a fellow plantser, I've read a lot of books on plotting, including Jim Coyne's and multiples. The one that really hit for me was Save the Cat, and that's why I call myself a plantser, because Save the Cat is like 15 beats. And it's kind of really the hero's journey, but written out in an extremely understandable way. And if you watch movies, you can easily see how movies follow this plot methodology. And so what that ends up giving me is that I understand that I have enough for a story and I know where I'm going, but I have the thrill of discovery along the way because it's so loose, you know. The other thing I have is I've developed a scene plan template, and it's a list of about maybe 15 points or questions that I ask myself before I write a scene. And I actually do it right before I write the scene. And so it's not all done in advance, but it's a tool that I developed myself and that I use and is really helpful for keeping a scene on track. And both of those I'm putting in my Brittany's writer room. If you guys want to check that out, I'm sharing all my tools with you for how I do it. And I write on Word, and I've tried Scrivener, but I just feel like it's not user friendly, you know. But there's certain parts about it that I love, you know, that you can, you know, put pictures in, and, you know, there's just a million ways that you can keep track of things, but it's just a little too overwhelming for me. So, okay, now let's get to our pantsers. Anybody have a tool that you love?
I'm like Sabrina. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I'm like Sabrina. I like pen and paper, and I like my Word, like my Google Docs, because I sometimes write at work, which, sorry, my manager, if you're watching this, but I write wherever I can. I have recently tried to plot. I have been trying to get into the world of plotting because my new story that I'm writing takes place like in the past and in the present. Like it's kind of a mix of the two. So I'm like, I need to plot out what's happening so I don't get too confused in these two timelines. So what I've been doing is I tried Plotter. It really wasn't for me. I bought it. I used it as much as I could. Couldn't get into Plotter. I'm using an Excel spreadsheet right now, and I have like sections where I'm like, this is what happens, and then this is what each character is doing in each section, and then like this is my list of deaths on the side, and like my little foreshadowing. And I've written 14 chapters doing that, and that's really impressive for me. So I'm going to take that as a win.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah. Jane, did you?
Yeah, I love Scrivener, which is kind of ironic because it's really much more of a plotter's tool than it is a pantser's tool, because it has all these little charts and, you know, cards you can put up and stickies. Everything that I absolutely hate in this world is in Scrivener. But the thing about Scrivener is that you don't have to use all that. What I like about it is, like, particularly when I'm writing a series that has multiple books in it, and I can keep them all in the same file. And then each book is a separate sub file. And then there's separate under that, each chapter is a separate little file. Mm-hmm. But then I can search the whole document, which helps a lot when you're trying to remember, okay, where did these two other people meet or what happened? You know, I can search everything. Also has research that I can put along the side on a panel and keep in front of me and make little notes about characters just so I remember. You know, I keep a running log of, okay, when it works a lot with my lawyer books because, and I have to figure out the timing because I have to figure out what age they are now, but they have to have gone, if they're lawyers, they have to have gone through college and gone through law school. And if they're a partner in a law firm, well, they can't just be 1 year out of law school. But, you know, I mean, it's, so I can keep track of these things. And also, especially because I have the one series, you know, the book I mentioned earlier, The Millionaire's Intriguing Offer, is like the third book in a series of stories about four, you know, partners, or actually three partners and another person in a law firm. But, you know, they each have their own book, but things have happened. People have gotten married and had kids. Sam, the hero in the first book, you know, they've got a few kids now. And I want to have those old characters interact in the new story. And I don't want to, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, well, okay, well, how old is the baby they had at the end of the first book? And how old is that teenage sister now? And what's she doing? So oddly, though, because, you know, I tended to pants my way with Scrivener as far as learning how to use it, which means I thought, I don't need the tutorials. I don't need a class. dove in, which means I got totally lost in it. So my actual chart for that book, that series of books, is I should have brought it with me, but it's a big crumpled, written over piece of yellow tablet paper that has columns and has, okay, year 1, year 2, year 3, and showing how old people are and when they reach certain milestones, in their lives, which again wasn't planned ahead like a plotter would do. It's just keeping track of it as I go, so that I know kind of where they are now. So I probably should put that on an Excel spreadsheet, but for some reason, I've just gotten used to my crumpled piece of yellow tablet paper that has all that information, which I did take a picture of on my phone, because I thought one time the horror of, oh my God, if I actually accidentally threw that away sometime, I'd be lost, because it would take me forever to recreate it. But Scrivener has really been helpful to me, as far as also it auto saves, and I write everything in Scrivener, and then you can just upload, or download, whichever it is, a particular chapter out of it into a Word doc. So that's what I do. I change it I take it out of Scrivener, download it to Word, and then from Word, then I can easily put it onto Wattpad. But then I also have a backup. It gives me a backup too, because my work's all in Scrivener, and then it's also in Word, and it's also on Wattpad. So I feel kind of triple protected that way.
I was going to say, in Scrivener, you have the ability to create characters too. And, maybe you should do that, like put your information about each character in, so that you can easily go to that character and know, rather than just having it on that sheet of paper, because I'm really scared for you right now.
Yeah, it's the cross-referencing is why I need the sheet of paper, which is why maybe I should be doing Excel, because it's the relationship. I mean, I need to know how old Sam and Camilla's baby is when Richie and Maria meet later and go over to their house for dinner, because and just keeping track of the passage of time, mostly by holidays, and figure out how old people are, because a lot of holidays happen. I mean, there's things happen at Halloween, things happen at New Year's, and I have to keep track of that, so I know what time of year am I in, when the story is taking place.
Okay, so actually, I'm seeing we have about 12 minutes left, and I'm wondering if our viewers might be having questions. Are you coming in, Holly? Okay, come in. I need to let her in. Okay. Sorry, I don't know why they put me in charge. Obviously, I don't know what I'm doing.
That's okay. Just pants your way through it.
I'm pantsing. I don't see her appearing anywhere.
Is there a button somewhere?
Sorry, guys. Oh, I don't see your face showing up. Okay. She's going to feed me the questions. Okay. We will get questions. Sorry for obviously they're never going to let me be in charge of the tech ever again. Okay, here we go. Here's the first question. Do the pantsers feel that they maybe delve into the world of plantsing if you were writing a trilogy or a longer story or series, or would you pants the entire series? Okay, pantsers.
Go ahead. Yeah, I pantsed a 6-book series, and that was a big leap for me, because before I would write and then go back and fix things up before I posted, but I just took the plunge and it worked out fine.
Van, what about you?
Same. I have an ongoing series, and I pants it, because I can't figure out what's going to happen in a future book if I haven't completed the one book I'm on. So I'm basically just going based off of what I previously wrote, and then figuring out from there what the story will be in the next one. So I pants it.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm not really into series. I only have one series, and it's kind of been easier to write because it's my Cannibal series, and each book is a different part of the family, so the stories don't really like intertwine with each other. So it's easy to pants each one because, sorry, my cat's on my lap. It's easy to pants each one because it's like writing its own story. It's just having to know like the rules of the world, which are pretty basic. So I don't really pants too much at all with the series.
Okay. All right, we have another question here, really good question. The first one was good too, but here's another good one. Do the pantsers ever fear running out of steam partway through a story because you haven't planned ahead? And have you ever had that happen? Have you ever started a story and discovered, wait, there's not enough here?
100%. So sorry to all my readers. I have so many stories on my profile that are not finished because I was like, oh, this is going to be a great idea. And I get like 6 chapters in and then I'm like, well, I have no clue where this is going. I've hit a wall and there's nowhere I can go from now. So it'd be lovely to plot in those situations. But yeah, I have like 25 works on my story and my 25 works on my profile. And I think maybe like 10 of them are actually finished.
Well, 10 is still pretty good.
I guess I'm pretty lucky. That's never happened to me. It seems to me like the more I write, like the new ideas just keep coming. Or now it maybe goes in a completely different direction than I thought it would in the beginning, but it just, it keeps going. Of course, a lot of what I do, I write thrillers, but I write a lot of romance. And of course, with romance, you do have a destination. Because one of the rules of romance is there's going to be a happily ever after or a happy for now for the couple. So I do know that these people have to end up together somehow, even though I try to come up with the craziest hooks that would make them the most unlikely people to ever end up together. And when I come up with those hooks, I have no idea how I'm going to solve that. And I have to figure that out as I'm going.
That's good.
There are times where I get stuck, but it's usually like maybe I'm just burned out from work and then it affects my ideas for the writing. And usually I just kind of have to take a week off. There's been times where I've taken a month off from writing because I just too much going on in personal life with work and it's just fogging my creative side. But then once I'm able to just kind of, chill and focus on other things, then that's when the ideas start hitting again and I'm able to hop back in and finish the story.
Great. Well, I actually have a little hack for when I get stuck, which is a free write. And I don't know if you guys have like read Bird by Bird or any of those books about.
Love that.
Yeah. So it's just really getting to the creative part of your psyche and just start writing about whatever. I usually start this way. This chapter is not working because I have this problem and I am the worst writer in the universe. And obviously I will never be able to fix this. And then I just kind of keep going. And every single time I've done it, I've come up with the answer. So the answer has always been in there somewhere. And this is the way I can access it. So I highly recommend trying it if you haven't. Okay. Next question. For plotters and pantsers, do you use a 3-act or 4-act outline? Okay, plotters and pantsers. Okay. Do you use 3 or 4-act outline for your stories? So, Sabrina?
I think it depends. Like the 3-act structure is a very Western way of storytelling. And I think it's very fascinating if you look into more methods. Like go to Southeast Asia, go to various parts of Africa. Like it just any given continent, there's more than one option. But like there's such thing as 2-act, 3-act, 4-act. Check them all out because you're going to surprise yourself that you might be able to. Maybe you've never heard of a 4-act structure, but you'll be like, oh, this would actually work with my idea. I try to consider what if the acts fit very well. I almost always end up in 3-act, but I do try to give other options their due consideration while I'm sitting down with that first date with my notebook. So it's worth thinking about before you start.
Okay. And Henry, what about you?
I mainly end up just writing in a 3-act structure. It's the majority of the stories that I consume and movies. I probably should expand my horizons, but that's what I end up writing to because that's what I'm familiar with.
Same, but I mean, if in Save the Cat, It's 3-act structure, but there's a midpoint, and so there's really kind of 4 acts. Like, the middle act is divided in half, and there's an exact midpoint, and there's the big change in the story that happens there. So you could sort of call it a 4-act, but technically it's 3-act. Next question, ever popular, how do you overcome writer's block? Well, I just told you my way, but you guys, do you have any secrets for how you overcome? Sabrina.
I feel like I did used to have writer's block when I used to try to kind of plants. Writing the entire outline out beforehand, it has eliminated that for me. It could possibly be that you need to do more plotting. If you're having it for the same reasons I did, doing more plotting might stop you from getting to that point.
Okay. Anyone else?
For me, I put on music, and I'm really glad I live alone now. And I just like pace around my apartment, and I just like try to put myself in the scene. I'm like, okay, if I was the character, what would I be doing? And I got like epic music playing in the background. Really hard to do when you have a roommate. Now I live alone. I do it all the time. I think that's why I'm writing a lot more. But that for me is like my golden way to get over writer's block.
I love that. Very active. And that's true. Like they say, like, just leave the computer or the notebook and go and take a walk or live your life. And sometimes during that, like driving sometimes, or, something will come to me. And of course, then I have to write it down while I'm driving, but oh well. Sorry, other drivers.
I'm always kind of the outlier on this topic because I don't believe in writer's block. I mean, it's not something I've ever really encountered. Yeah, I don't understand it. I don't understand when people say, I've got writer's block, so I haven't been able to write for 3 months. And I'm like, just get your butt in the chair and write. and I mean, sometimes, do I get stuck on someplace in a story? Yeah, sometimes I get stuck on what I want to have happen next. But I don't think that's really writer's block. That's more, that kind of comes with pantsing, where I'm trying to make a decision on which direction I want to go with something. But as far as writer's block, no. I mean, I can't go into court and tell the judge, sorry, I had lawyer's block, my brief's not done. So, I just, and I know that sounds kind of mean, but I just feel like, no, to stop whining about writer's block and just write, and it will come.
Just write.
And who cares if it's crap? I mean, you can't revise a blank page. So, I mean, if you feel like it's not coming, just start writing it. And who cares if you end up having to delete it and throw it all away? If you hadn't written it, you'd have nothing anyways. And by writing it, you may have something good that you can use, and maybe you have 10% of it you can use. So just push through it is my advice.
That's good advice. All right. Well, we're almost.
That's from the mean lawyer.
We're almost out of time here. I wanted to just mention the Waddies coming up. And I hope that this discussion has helped you if you are planning to enter a story in the Waddies this year. So, to give you ideas on how you might want to prepare your Waddie winning story. I thought we could go through each of our panelists and ask if you've entered in the Waddies or won the Waddies, and if your story has been pantsed or plantsed or plotted. Real quick. Henry?
I have entered the Waddies several times. I have not won, and those stories have all been plantsed.
Okay, cool. Maybe this will be your year. Jane?
Hope, huh?
Or you're not entering?
I've entered several times, haven't won. I didn't have anything that was, completed that qualified. Like last year, all my stories are pantsed, and I have never won. But I think you should always keep trying, because in writing, this is art and it's subjective too, and you just need to keep putting yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Mason?
I have entered the last 2 years. Last year, I was shortlisted with my story Day After Day. And when people ask about that, I always say enter every story you have eligible, because I almost didn't enter day after day. And I'm pretty sure either Deb or Rodney convinced me to enter it.
Yep.
And that was my story that got shortlisted. And I was like, oh, this one's like so like weird. No one's going to like it. And that was my one that got me shortlisted. So, and that's my only claim to fame.
That story is so cool. That's my favorite story of yours, Mason.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If you can enter it. You don't know what's going to happen. Just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Excellent. Okay, Sabrina.
Yeah, Mason, I had the exact same thing happen to me. I've only entered the Waddies a couple years. I haven't won, but one year I thought, oh, if any of my stories have a shot, it's Dirty Lying Fairies, right? It's what got me into paid. It's what is getting published this year by Wattpad Books. I was like, oh, that's the story. And then I thought, well, this other high fantasy I write, Wild, it's the Wild trilogy. Half Wild was the first book and it was eligible. I was like, I guess I'll enter it. And that one got shortlisted and Dirty Lying Fairies didn't. So I was like, oh, okay.
So
and I was so sure too. I was like, if one's going to do better, it's going to be the other. But I was wrong.
Wow. Incredible. Van, what about you?
So I've entered every single year. So every single year that I've been on Wattpad. So this year will be my 10th time, and I have not won a Waddy yet. Although I did, like I said earlier, I shortlisted in 2018. Last year I entered a book, and kind of like Sabrina, I thought for sure if there's a year I'm going to win something, it'll be this year, because I just felt so strongly about the book that I entered. And then it didn't even shortlist. And so I was a little bit salty. I was like, man, of all the books, that one had the chance and it did not. And so I told myself, well, maybe the Waddies just aren't for me. But I talked myself out of that, and I'm going to submit a story this year. So this will be my 10th time submitting.
Great. Maybe this will be the year.
I hope so.
My first book on Wattpad won a Waddy back in 2014, The Mermaids and the Vampires Who Love Them. So I just thought, oh, winning a Waddy is super easy, because I won with my first book. And I've entered most every year since, not every year. And, long listed on one story, but never won another one. So hopefully soon I will win another. So, because I'm super greedy. Anyway, I want to thank all of you guys for coming, and our audience. Thank you for coming as well. Please make sure to check out all of our panelists on Wattpad. Come say hi. If you have more questions, you can contact people on their profiles. And we'll see you next month for next month's event with WritersConnX, and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.